Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
On the day of my wedding, I overheard my fiancée chuckling with her friends. Picture this. My ex storms in and whisks me away, like something out of a Hollywood film. They all burst into laughter. I stood there, motionless, my heart sinking. An hour later, she discovered how this script truly concludes. My wedding day was meant to be the pinnacle of joy. And in a strange, ironic twist, it was the moment I saw everything with crystal clarity. It was the day I narrowly escaped a catastrophic mistake. It was also the day I became the screenwriter of the cinematic fantasy my fiancée always dreamed of starring in. She just didn't care for the finale I crafted. Let me set the scene. My name is Ethan, and I'm 35. My fiancée, Megan, was 29. We'd been a couple for 3 years, engaged for 1. On the surface, life was idyllic. I had a solid career, we lived in a beautiful home I owned, and I provided the lifestyle she claimed she always wanted. But for the past year, something gnawed at me. It was her fixation on her ex-boyfriend, Kyle. He lingered like a shadow in every conversation. She'd mention him subtly. Kyle loved this band. Kyle and I used to visit this place all the time. I'm not the jealous type, but I'm no fool either. I knew she hadn't moved on. I tried addressing it and she'd brush it off, laugh, and call me overly sensitive, insisting Kyle was ancient history. Her eyes, though, betrayed her. I'm a direct person. I don't play games. 6 months before the wedding, I sat her down for a serious talk. I told her the constant references to Kyle were disrespectful, and if she wasn't fully invested in our future, we should part ways. She put on a performance, shed a few tears, and swore I was her only desire. She vowed to stop mentioning him, to erase him from our lives. For a while, she kept her word. I convinced myself we'd turned a page. I was naive. Fast forward to our wedding day, last Saturday. The venue was a stunning historic estate we booked for the weekend. I was in my tuxedo, nervous but eager. The ceremony was an hour away. I was heading to find my best man when I passed the bridal suite, where Megan was preparing with her bridesmaids. The door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to catch their laughter. I heard her best friend, Sarah, say, "You're so relaxed. Aren't you nervous at all?" Then Megan's voice, bubbly and carefree. "Nervous? Only if Kyle showed up." They giggled. Then Megan said the words that changed everything. "Seriously though, imagine him bursting in right before I say, 'I do,' and carrying me off. So romantic, like a movie." More laughter. Sarah teased, "You'd totally run off with him, wouldn't you?" Megan let out a wistful sigh. In a second, I stood frozen in the hallway, the world muted. It wasn't just a playful comment. It was her truest wish, confessed to her friends on the day she was meant to pledge her life to me. In a second, the pain hit like a lightning bolt, sharp and fleeting, gone in moments. In its place came a calm, steely resolve. This wasn't a shock. It was validation of the unease I'd felt for a year. The wedding I'd poured a fortune into. The future I'd envisioned. It was all a facade. She wasn't marrying me. She was settling for me. I didn't barge in or raise my voice. I turned and walked back to my suite. My mind was already plotting, gears turning with icy precision. She wanted a cinematic moment. Fine. I'd deliver a spectacle she'd never forget. Update 1. Back in my suite, my best man and brother, Liam, was waiting. He saw my expression and knew something was off. "What's wrong?" he asked. "You look like you've seen a phantom." "Worse," I replied. I heard the truth. I recounted what I'd overheard. Liam wasn't shocked. He'd never warmed to Megan, always sensing something artificial about her. He listened, his face growing tense. When I finished, he shook his head. "So, what's the plan?" "Calling it off." "Oh, I'm calling it off," I said, pulling out my phone. "But not quietly. She wants a movie. I'm giving her one. I need a favor. Get me Kyle's number." Liam knew a guy who knew a guy. It was a long shot, but minutes later, a number appeared on his phone. Kyle's. The next move was critical. I had a burner phone stashed in my car for emergencies. This qualified. I retrieved it from the glove box. I couldn't text Kyle from my own number. I had to be cunning, posing as one of her desperate bridesmaids. I crafted the message carefully. "Kyle, it's Sarah, Megan's friend. You need to get here now. Megan's a wreck, sobbing in the bridal suite, saying she can't go through with this. She keeps saying you're the one she should be with. If you ever cared for her, Come get her before she makes a huge mistake. The ceremony's in less than an hour. Don't reply, just come. It was a compelling tale, but it needed a hook. Something irresistible. I added one final line. She's wearing the locket you gave her with your picture inside. She said she can't take it off. It was a fabrication, but believable. He'd given her a locket years ago that she used to wear constantly. It still sat in her jewelry box. I was gambling he wouldn't recall if she'd returned it. I hit send, silenced the burner phone, and tucked it away. Now what? Liam asked. Now, I said, adjusting my tie. We proceed with the wedding. The next hour felt like a dream. I played my part flawlessly. I posed for photos with my groomsmen. I chatted with my parents, feigning excitement. I was an actor in a high-stakes drama. The ceremony began. The music soared. Guests filled the elegant garden where the altar stood. I took my place at the front with the officiant watching the procession. The groomsmen, the bridesmaids, including Sarah, who avoided my gaze. Then Megan appeared. She was breathtaking. The perfect bride approaching a man she didn't truly love, her mind lost in fantasies of another. She floated down the aisle on her father's arm, beaming with apparent joy. As she reached me, her father handed her to me. She squeezed my hand, the picture of a blissful bride. Just as the officiant opened his book to start, a stir erupted at the back of the garden. Heads turned. A man strode up the aisle, his face a mix of confusion and resolve. It was Kyle. In jeans and a t-shirt, he looked entirely out of place. He marched straight to the altar. The guests murmured in shock. Megan's face paled. For a fleeting moment, I saw it. A spark of thrill in her eyes. Her fantasy was unfolding. Megan, Kyle said, his voice unsteady. Sarah texted me. She said you were waiting for me? Megan stared, speechless. Her mother looked ready to scream. Her father seemed on the verge of collapse. Before anyone could speak, I stepped forward, taking the microphone from the officiant. No need to panic, everyone, I said, my voice steady and clear, echoing through the speakers. Let me clarify. I turned to Kyle. Kyle, thanks for showing up. Your timing's impeccable. An hour ago, my fiancée here was telling her friends her ultimate dream was for you to crash our wedding and sweep her away. I overheard it, and I'm a romantic at heart. I believe in making wishes come true, so I sent you that text. From Sarah. I glanced at Sarah, who looked like she might collapse. I turned back to Megan, whose expression had shifted from shock to dread as the truth sank in. So, go for it, Kyle, I said, gesturing to Megan. She's yours. Her fantasy is now your reality. Best of luck. I faced the stunned crowd. Folks, I'm sorry, but there won't be a wedding today. Megan's made her choice clear. But the good news? Everything's paid for. The bar's open, the band's ready, and there's a feast waiting. So join me in celebrating my narrow escape from a lifetime of betrayal. Let's make it a night to remember. I dropped the microphone. I walked to my parents, who stared at me with a mix of astonishment and admiration. I hugged my mom, then headed to the bar, ordered a double whiskey, and watched the chaos erupt. The scene at the altar was pure pandemonium. Megan stood frozen, her face a mask of horror. Kyle looked like he'd stumbled into a nightmare, realizing he'd been lured into a humiliating trap. Megan's father was shouting at him. Her mother was sobbing. I stood at the bar, sipping my drink, observing the unraveling. My family and friends, after a moment of stunned silence, began to applaud. Liam joined me, slapped my shoulder, and ordered a drink. My liberation party had begun. Megan's family fell apart. Her father, obsessed with appearances, tried to regain control, yelling at Kyle to leave, pleading with Megan to pull herself together. But it was futile. The damage was done. The story spread among the guests like wildfire. Kyle, to his credit, simply turned and left without another word, fleeing the scene. Megan's cinematic hero had abandoned her on the stage. Megan, supported by her distraught bridesmaids, was led to a side room. Her family followed, and a shouting match echoed across the garden. Some of her family's guests, likely they're out of duty, slipped away quietly. But most of the crowd, my family, friends, and many mutual acquaintances, stayed. It became the greatest party I've ever attended. The band, after a brief huddle, switched to lively rock tunes instead of sappy wedding songs. The bar was swarmed. Guests approached me all night, shaking my hand, calling it the most epic thing they'd ever witnessed. My bullet-dodging bash was a roaring success. The financial fallout was messy, but I was prepared. The wedding cost just over $100,000. I'd covered about 70% of it, with her parents contributing the rest. All contracts were in my name. The deposits were non-refundable. The next day, my phone was a battlefield. Countless texts and missed calls. Voicemails from Megan, swinging between tearful apologies and angry accusations. Voicemails from her father, threatening to sue me for publicly shaming his daughter. I ignored them all. I let my lawyer handle it. He sent a concise letter to Megan's father, stating that I considered their $30,000 contribution a gift toward a wedding their daughter chose not to go through with. It included an invoice for her share of the non-refundable deposits I'd paid, totaling $35,000. The letter noted that if he pursued legal action for humiliation, I'd countersue for that amount and subpoena the bridesmaids to testify about the conversation I'd overheard. The legal threats vanished. The social repercussions for Megan were brutal. The wedding story became local lore. Everyone had their version, but the ending was the same. Megan, the dreamer, got her wish, and it backfired spectacularly. Her reputation was shattered. Kyle faced his own fallout. He had a serious girlfriend of over a year, who was furious about him crashing another woman's wedding. She ended things publicly on social media. His movie star moment cost him his real relationship. A week later, Megan appeared at my house. I was in the front yard, tending to my garden. She stepped out of her car, looking exhausted and defeated. "We need to talk," she said. "No, we don't," I replied, not looking up from the soil. "Please, Ethan," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I messed up. It was a stupid fantasy, a joke. It didn't mean anything." "It meant everything," I said, meeting her gaze. "It meant that on the day you were supposed to choose me, you were dreaming of someone else. It meant our relationship was a lie." "It wasn't a lie," she sobbed. "I do love you. I was just scared. You destroyed everything. You humiliated me in front of everyone." "I didn't humiliate you, Megan," I said, my tone icy. "I gave you what you wanted. You wanted your ex to show up. I made it happen. You wrote the story. I just directed it. You didn't like the ending. That's not my issue." "But what do I do now?" she cried. "My life's a disaster." "I don't know," I said, returning to my garden. "Maybe write another script. Just leave me out of it." I never spoke to her again. Final update: 6 months have passed. The storm has settled. The breakup was clean. My lawyer informed hers that any attempt to claim assets would trigger the lawsuit and subpoenas. She signed the papers without resistance. Surprisingly, her parents sent a check for the $35,000, accompanied by a brief note from her father, for the damages. I think it was his way of acknowledging his daughter's fault. From what I've heard, Megan's life is in shambles. She moved back with her parents. Her friends, including the laughing bridesmaids, deserted her. Being the star of the year's most humiliating wedding tale made her a social outcast. She's working a retail job now, far from the glamorous life she thought she deserved. Kyle's still single. His reputation as a reckless romantic hasn't helped him. I almost pity him. Almost. As for me, life's good. I sold the house, it held too many ghosts. I bought a smaller place just for me. The $100,000 I spent on the wedding, I don't see it as a loss. It was the cost of my freedom, the most expensive and valuable lesson I've ever learned. I'm dating again. Someone gentle, genuine, and grounded. Someone who finds my life engaging, not dull. Someone who'd never dream of joking about leaving me for another. The real revenge wasn't the public spectacle. It was taking her at her word. She told her friends what she truly wanted, and I made it happen. I gave her the cinematic moment she'd always fantasized about. And, like in the movies, she now lives with the consequences of her choices. The credits have rolled, and she didn't get the fairy tale ending she expected. I, however, did.